Hey everyone, first of all, sorry about my face. Decisions were made. Last night, my wife and I binged a new documentary that's been airing on HBO Max, or just Max, whatever, called Breath of Fire.
He offers his students a prescriptive lifestyle, what to eat, when you should have sex with your spouse.
We watch it in one sitting. It's really great, really well done. Yet another really great, really well done documentary on a prestige streaming service about a cult with so many similarities to Jehovah's Witnesses. But as somebody who creates content about Jehovah's Witnesses in the hopes of raising awareness, I'm an ex-member. I want the abuses of this cult to get wider exposure. For example, in a Netflix or HBO documentary, there is a reason why I think that hasn't happened.
Possible? Boring?
Credit where credit is due, there have been some really great documentaries on Jehovah's Witnesses. Vice had a really good documentary. Leah Remini had that really good special. There was the Four Corners documentary that aired overseas in Australia, but it's on YouTube in full. It's really great. The Telegraph did a docuseries podcast that's really well produced about CSA happening within the group in the UK. And yet, Jehovah's Witnesses have never had a big documentary, a prestige thing like what's happened with Nexium in Scientology and Mother God.
I am God!
Seemingly every cult that's not Jehovah's Witnesses, even really tiny ones. There's a couple factors in this, but one thing that I do think is really important is that the group is very boring.
We are so happy to have you on the governing body, and we wish you Jehovah's blessing in your new assignment. And we continue to pray for all of you. We love you all very much.
There are more reasons, which maybe I'll talk about later, but for our purposes today, I think a key one is that the group has very successfully convinced the world that they're super boring.
The term cult means different things to different people. However, consider two common perceptions regarding cults and why those perceptions don't apply to us.
But boringness is an adopted aesthetic that they are using strategically to their benefit to avoid criticism. That is my opinion, but I think the pattern that we've been seeing in the group over the last decade or two shows that I'm right. Obviously, I think I'm right, but stick with me. Let's think back to the last, 6 governing body members that have been appointed. So the ones that are really clear in my mind in my lifetime. Mark Sanderson.
Jehovah is with you, you mighty warrior.
Was followed by Kenneth Cook.
Hi.
And then Gage Fleekle and Jeffrey Winder at the same time.
Boring?
We're not unfeeling robots.
And then they have just also added J.D. Jodely and Jacob Rumpf.
To be honest, the thought of serving in this capacity was scary for me and my wife.
As I mentioned in a recent video, all these guys kind of look the same to me, and they also all kind of sound the same. I'm always trying to find creative ways to underline what I find so creepy about the boringness of the group, and as a matter of fact, I discovered this clip while I was editing this thing that I do every year for really no reason other than personal issues that I'm working through, which is this awkward silent supercut of the governing body at their annual meeting. It's really a vanity ceremony. Every long, extended applause break is captured and recorded, with every governing body member just basking in the glory.
Everlasting glory. Everlasting glory.
Sorry, I forgot saying that summons him. So this leaked early and I covered it on a live stream, right? Even as somebody who talks about this stuff semi-professionally on YouTube, I think I just skipped past the Kenneth Cook stuff because it was really, really boring. Kenneth Cook, I think we can totally skip, right? Just generally in life. So I'm just scrolling through looking for goofy moments for a meme edit, and I stumble across this stretch of this talk where it's like Kenneth Cook tries to give a crash course in everything wrong with Jehovah's Witnesses.
And we comply, and we love it.
Now, it's going to require a little bit of endurance because it is boring. It's Kenneth Cook after all. But I want to go through this because it underscores my point. This is so dull and lifeless that it's easy to forget that he is talking about really, really dark, manipulative stuff. The first thing Kenny Cookie says that's legally damaging to the group is that they have not changed their standards. Thank you very much.
But does our increased understanding of Jehovah's mercy here mean that his righteous and just standards have somehow been changed? James 1:17 tells us that Jehovah does not vary or change.
And what he's implicitly saying is that they will never change because Jehovah never changes, and they're the ones who speak for Jehovah.
I am Jehovah, I do not change. So then, Jehovah doesn't change, and his standards as to what is right and wrong have not changed. That is why recent adjustments to our view of God's mercy are just that, adjustments to our view. Adjustments to
Confident leadership. A steady hand. We'll get into this later, but they're not appointing their best and brightest. Next thing that's very damning for them, and they're stupid for saying on camera, is that this is punishment.
but he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. Well,
Jehovah will not leave people unpunished. This is punishment. Our standards will never change. Also, hey Norway, we did change a little bit. Can we get our money back? They just lost their charity status in Norway because of the shunning practice being an abuse of human rights. And at the exact same time that they're doing this and altering the wording of the study watchtowers so that they can make these minor adjustments to try and trick the Norwegian government into thinking that they've changed when really they haven't, they also are releasing this stuff that's so crazy.
knowing that Jehovah will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, what things should we then help to tear down or send away from the congregations?
What things should we help tear down or send away? So this is crazy. The language here is so planned out. They're so careful with how they word these things. You can tell he's very scripted.
Expose and remove.
They are saying that it is not just that Jehovah judges people. Removing people from the congregation is not just Jehovah enacting his judgment. Jehovah's Witnesses as individuals are to help God in tearing down.
What things should we then help to tear down or send away from the congregations?
Tear down and send away. We are helping Jehovah tear down and send away the bad thing.
We do not want the conduct of unrepentant ones to take up residence in our congregations. That is why, since sin is still on the earth, the elders will continue to remove unrepentant ones from the congregation.
This is framed as unrepentant sin, but the worst sin you can commit is not believing that Kenneth Cook was appointed by Jesus Christ, and also the other governing body members. But you know, if you start doubting any one of them, you can get disfellowshipped.
Exposing it and removing it from the congregation. Expose and remove.
Tearing down, exposing it, and removing it. The removal process is a process of exposing the wicked one. And that is what it feels like when you're a Jehovah's Witness. When they announce that somebody is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses, it is so dramatic. He also keeps mentioning the faithful angels. Boy, does he keep mentioning the faithful angels.
Jehovah uses his faithful angels, and his faithful angels.
Jesus and the faithful angels.
Jesus and the angels, these faithful angels imitated their heavenly Father, and the faithful angels.
He's doing this because the leadership is really emphasizing lately that angels are invisibly helping Jehovah's Witnesses all the time. They're putting this imagery in their videos now. It's in a lot of their illustrations in their recent publications. They are constantly emphasizing to members that Jehovah and his faithful angels are with them all the time, validating all of the Jehovah's Witnessy things they do, but also constantly judging them and watching them to make sure that they're doing all the Jehovah's Witnessy things that they're supposed to do. Because this is a high-control, high-demand religion. The members are captive. Held captive by this boring guy and all the other guys, but ugh. And then this gets really disgusting. Full trigger warning here. I guess I should have given it earlier. He frames to Jehovah's Witnesses how amazing the removal/disfellowshipping process is, because after the wicked one is removed, Jehovah's so happy and the congregation is so united and Jesus is happy.
When wrongdoing is removed from among Jehovah's people, and they are united together in clean and pure worship, Jehovah sees this, and his people are blessed.
United together in clean and pure worship. What he is saying without saying is that before, when there was a wicked person among Jehovah's Witnesses, their worship as a congregation was impure and they were not truly unified. There was this spiritual infection that needed to be healed. But now Jehovah sees them. This is a really scary thing as a witness. In addition to policing everybody else, you're most policing yourself. And it's being reiterated to you that if you don't confess your sins to the elders, it could tarnish the worship of the entire congregation. Your prayers are not really going to get through to God. There's this hidden pornography habit. Brother Schween hasn't confessed, and therefore the congregation's worship is being clouded. It's a very physical process, this transmission of Holy Spirit from heaven, which is up, and the congregation, which is on earth. And if there's sin blocking the way, it can't quite get through the roof of the Kingdom Hall. Sorry, I was trying to be less snarky in this video. It didn't work.
Even so, to keep his blessing, we must also imitate his mercy and remain ready to welcome back repentant ones.
And look, you're not being cruel. You are ready to welcome people back. It might be hard to do that because you might be so mad at them for putting you through the horrible process of shunning them. But you're being a strong and brave and Christ-like Christian by always being ready to welcome back those filthy sinners who abandon Jehovah and the true worship of his people. You might have picked up on this if you haven't been cheating and skipping ahead past what Kenneth Cook is saying, but he's pretty condescending. Kind of talks to people like they're preschoolers. That's like the number one comment I get from people on TikTok and YouTube who are not Jehovah's Witnesses and never have been. They're like, why do they talk to their members like they're preschoolers? Well, it's infantilization. I'll define it by way of example.
Like the concept of tearing down, the concept of building up is not difficult to picture when you think of it in terms of a building. Now, some houses are in bad shape, but they are not beyond repair like the one we saw earlier. They can be restored as illustrated on screen. It's in bad shape, but look at that. It can be fixed up. With that in mind, when it comes to welcoming back and building up repentant ones, we are helped to do this when we imitate Jesus and the faithful angels.
And why would anybody tolerate this? Why would anybody believe what this guy is saying? Because of the wild poetic license that the governing body takes with Scripture, which, in this critic's opinion, is really just theologically convenient fan fiction. Kenneth Cook reads this letter that was written by somebody who used to be disfellowshipped. And I want you to keep in mind that the only thing that has changed in the equation as far as shunning is that good Jehovah's Witnesses who are not removed from the congregation can choose, if their conscience allows them to, say hello to a disfellowshipped one. And they can only say hello. They would not want to linger in conversation. Okay, that's the only thing that's changed. People might be able to say hi to you if you're disfellowshipped. Well, here's how it's framed.
One person who was removed from the congregation wrote to the governing body, and this is what he said.
The fact that friends can now say a simple, heartfelt greeting blows my mind. I have felt like a walking plague walking into the Kingdom Hall, as many friends avoided eye contact and would clear out of the way. But I get it. That was our understanding up until that time. Jehovah is an amazing, one and only true God.
His love is always being manifested, as in this case. To direct you brothers to announce this new arrangement, I look forward to receiving a visit from the elders.
Well, what a fine expression that was.
That's one of the worst things I've ever seen, but the drama here. Documentarians, you're missing out on this. It's okay, I did too. Here's another thing I totally skipped past. In addition to Kenneth Cook reading this letter, Gage Flegel describes how amazing the new changes are to this fellowshipping, the change that you can say hi, and he cries, he gets choked up, and because he gets choked up, the audience starts applauding like, you go, Gage. It's so brave. He's being so vulnerable about how kind his cult is for letting people say hi to disfellowshipped people, maybe. Here's why I bring all this up. I literally didn't see this because I was bored. When I was watching this on the live stream, I was too bored and I skipped past it. Unlike the governing body, I do want my live streams to be entertaining and semi-watchable, so I had to cut Kenneth Cook. I just had to cut him from the program. But in doing that, I kind of missed this really important clip. It's buried hours deep into the program. It's publicly available, but only hardcore Jehovah's Witnesses are going to see it. The public does not see the craziest stuff that this religion does. The one thing that does get a lot of clicks and views is the Caleb and Sophia videos, and I guess just their other weird propaganda videos that people like myself cover on YouTube. But all of that falls in the normal bounds of weirdness that we tolerate from religions in the United States, if that makes sense. Jehovah's Witness and Mormon cartoons are weird, but also PragerU does cartoons that are really similar, and all of us grew up with VeggieTales. I know, sorry to mention VeggieTales and Caleb and Sophia in the same sentence. So while the cartoons are really disturbing, it might be surprising to somebody who doesn't know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses. It's also not that different from the sort of evangelical propaganda that a lot of Christian churches make in the United States. So I want you to think about that from a documentary filmmaker's perspective, because I've noticed that the documentaries that I always get really hooked on, like this Breath of Fire one that we just watched, we really liked this one on Twin Flames that came out earlier. The Vow is really great. Going Clear, iconic. Well, all of those have a formula, which is they have a charismatic singular cult leader that can be the backbone of the entire documentary.
Amy Carlson. They called her Mother God.
Mother God.
This is Mother God.
I'm Guru Jagat, and I want to introduce you to Kundalini Yoga.
The American has built a multi-million-dollar business as a yoga master to the stars.
She's like the Kim Kardashian of the spiritual world.
Nexian is the umbrella company. Keith was the founder.
He was a legend.
Yes, they are going to talk about members who joined the group and what their experience was like joining the group, but they're also going to focus on the freak show element of it. They're going to focus on this weirdo who started a cult. What motivated this person to start a cult? And why were people so captivated by them? The governing body are cult leaders, and they're more clever than I give them credit for sometimes, because the fact of them being a them is really beneficial. There isn't just one charismatic guy. There are like 10 or 11 really uncharismatic guys.
Greetings.
They are consciously selecting boring company men. Clearly, the group is making a strategic play here to not appoint their best speakers. I mean, if you watch the broadcast, it's not like they're appointing the best JW broadcasting speakers onto the governing body. They don't care about who looks good on camera. So Jehovah's Witnesses are denying documentary filmmakers who are going for something that's going to be popular and bingeable television. They're denying them an easy hook in a charismatic leader with a bunch of crazy social media videos or old training videos or hours and hours of tape recordings of themselves. Don't get me wrong, we have a lot of footage of the governing body, but it's so boring to people who are wrong. I think the boringness is what's captivating about it. That's one of the things I've been interested in capturing on this channel from the very beginning, how eerie and unsettling the slow, deliberately robotic way of speaking that they have is. It's really strange. Nobody talks quite like Jehovah's Witness speakers do. And even more strangely, there's an entire school where they teach people how to talk like weird robotic salespeople.
We're not unfeeling robots.
All their videos are maybe emotionally effective to the existing in-group of Jehovah's Witnesses, but they are deeply off-putting to everybody on the outside. Everybody sees how creepy they are. I personally think that documentarians are missing out on what's really creepy and interesting and unique about Jehovah's Witnesses, but boards of directors are also normal. Those are not weird. Those are not weird, hooky things that you can center a documentary around, really. The Breath of Fire documentary is about Kundalini yoga. Every time they said it, I thought of the actress Linda Cardellini. But it's about a yoga cult. That's an interesting hook in and of itself. And the charismatic cult leader is a woman who stole her ideas from somebody else, and there's lots of celebrities who get wrapped up in this movement. There's a weird hook that makes it not just another Christian religion. Documentaries about the Quiverful movement can lock onto the whole million kids of it all. That Keep Sweet and Obey documentary, very, very similar group to Jehovah's Witnesses, but they have that interesting thing where like all the women have to look exactly the same. Scientology has the E-meter. It has this sci-fi element of it that makes it a little weird, a little not like a normal religion. Jehovah's Witnesses, I think very cleverly, do have all of the trappings of a normal religion. The other thing that all the other cult documentaries have going for it is that a lot of the people in the documentary are fairly well-off people with some kind of connections to the media already. The really small ones draw attention because they are so bizarre, like the Mother God thing. But they had the online influencer element of it, and then a very weird public death of the leader. But Scientology and NXIVM and that musical rock church whose name I can't remember right now, and Kundalini Yoga all have the celebrity element. Jehovah's Witnesses don't really have that. There are a few ex-members who have talked about it a little bit, like Luke Evans has been out there talking more. Love to see it.
I was also the one that would get bullied. And they would, all the worst things I could be called, Jovi, which is the Jehovah's Witness slang, and then, and in the book I mentioned the worst one, which was like Jovi Bender. So it was the gay slang, the attacking word of a gay person, but also the Jehovah's Witness. And the crazy part was those two things could never exist in real life.
Donald Glover, one of the most famous people in the United States and the world, he's a superstar, and he really doesn't talk about it much. And when he's asked about it on Stephen Colbert, he's going to be more conciliatory instead of someone like Leah Remini, who's really going to take Scientology to task. And of course, Scientology is the other one, where there's all these celebrities.
So how do your parents feel about like the job you do now? Is that okay with the strictures of being a witness?
I think no.
But they must still be very proud of you.
I mean, no, they're the best parents ever. Like, they're really good. I was talking to them last night.
NXIVM, same thing. Jehovah's Witnesses keep their members poor and so insular that they really have no outside connections when they leave the group. We try to reach out to journalists, but Jehovah's Witnesses are established enough that people kind of have heard of the name before. But they're not so crazy and infamous as Scientology because they don't have the public-facing craziness of Tom Cruise or massive scandals involving the FBI and CIA. I think that's why the documentaries that have come out very smartly and properly center their stories on the victims, on survivors of the group, people who have experienced abuse, shunning, the whole lot of it. But it is truly impossible to get an interview with the governing body unless they are called to court. There is simply no way to get a hold of them. There are security gates at Bethel. You cannot just get to these governing body guys unless you're an investigative journalist and might be able to track down their whereabouts, in which case they're just going to run away from you like they did with Trey Bundy that one time. When you think about it, the governing body are every bit as inaccessible as someone like David Miscavige. You know the Where's Shelley thing, like what happened to Shelley Miscavige? Like literally all of the governing body members' wives could have disappeared for all I know. We don't know anything about them. So I think this is the challenge that we face as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses trying to raise awareness of the group. The group's harms are indeed very bad, but they don't have the niche, quirky twist that some of these more fun cults have. I don't say that to be like disrespectful to people in those groups. I'm saying like from a cynical marketing perspective. One of the reasons why I made that real estate video was that I think that the unpaid labor element of the group is really underexplored. Something I noticed about this documentary on the yoga cult and the last few documentaries I've watched about cults is that they all focused on how little the workers were paid relative to their work. And I'm like, dude, Jehovah's Witnesses don't get paid anything. All they do is work all the time and it's all free. So to sum it up, Jehovah's Witnesses are really boring. And I think that that is actually a conscious strategy on part of the organization. If they try and shift to be more trendy and have appeal on Instagram, I think they view that as undignified, you know? I know a lot of old school Jehovah's Witnesses probably do find the new school JW broadcasting era to be undignified, but it is all at least kind of contained on the Jehovah's Witness website, and you kind of have to go find it. It's not going to find you so much. Whereas if it's just like there's a Jehovah's Witness TikTok or Instagram in the same way that some of these other groups have weaponized social media, then it's really game over. Then Taylor Lorenz is going to find it. So I think Jehovah's Witnesses aren't covered as much because they're boring. But I think the fact that they are boring is what makes them interesting, because it seems to be such a conscious choice at this point. Why give a guy like Kenneth Cook power and influence? This is not a man who is good at anything, as far as I can tell. What's he good at? What value is this guy adding to the organization? I don't think anything, really. I think he is just literally a workhorse. They have a schedule to keep. They have little departments that they're the heads of. They send people all over the world to do these dedication talks for Jehovah's Witnesses because they're kind of celebrities and they have to make appearances because in addition to being the religious leaders, they're also a board of directors of a company. And so they all travel around and get information from the field. And so why do you appoint a guy like Kenneth Cook? I don't know. Short of us getting more information about these guys, it seems like you appoint him because he happens to meet the qualification. He is an absolute diehard company man who has some knowledge of the skeletons in the closet of the group, having worked in the service department. See previous videos for context there.
And we comply and we love it.
And because he does not seem like the kind of guy who's going to start his own charismatic spin-off of the Witnesses, now does he? One of the big problems that happened with Hillsong Church is that one of their pastors became a celebrity and he became bigger than the movement itself. He started getting in with all these celebrities, and so when he had his inevitable implosion, it was very public and in all the tabloids. It was a genuinely big media story because he had become a genuinely big media figure. There are charismatic speakers within Jehovah's Witnesses, but they don't put them on camera. I think it's because they know that somebody who's a really good charismatic speaker just of their own volition and doesn't rely on what the society deems to be good speaking is not being humble. They're not yielding to the theocratic arrangement because they're not really following the rules of the theocratic ministry school. They've got internal logic for why everybody has to talk exactly the same way on their videos. But it has the benefit of not having somebody who's so charismatic and successful that people start enjoying them and their stuff more than they enjoy the church itself. Definitely no Jehovah's Witnesses are only Jehovah's Witnesses because of the fact that they like some individual member of the governing body. Nobody's out here standing anybody in the governing body among Jehovah's Witnesses. They'll say like, oh, I love Brother Lett because he's so loving. They really don't. They're not showing up for Stephen Lett in the way that Hillsong Church people may have been showing up for whatever that one guy's name was who was friends with Justin Bieber. That's one thing I kind of wonder about with Tony Morris, if I can move into the conspiracy corner.
Welcome, Internet. I'm so happy to share with you this conspiracy theory.
I think the pattern that we've seen ever since his ouster is all of these rapid changes to these tentpole things that they had for a long time, like counting service time, not adjusting disfellowshipping at all, beards, generally beards on the faces of dudes. All those changes came right on the back of Tony being not there anymore for reasons we don't know officially, but I do wonder if part of it was that he had such a strong personality. He easily had the strongest personality on the governing body. David Splane and Jeffrey Jackson also have very strong personalities, and they're probably the more charismatic speakers that the group has, but they're very old and they won't be around forever. There's going to be a point where the best speaker on the governing body is Mark Sanderson, and that is a dire situation.
Here I am. Isn't that exciting and wonderful?
Because Mark Sanderson, not a good speaker. He's just boring company man. He's the least bad version of a bad Jehovah's Witness speaker. And at some point, he's going to be like the senior itis. So I think one of the reasons why their abuses aren't more widely covered is exactly why I find them interesting, which is that they are so consciously and meticulously, with great malice of forethought, boring. But one man's boring is another man's many supercuts and edits and hours of video content, so like and subscribe. So anyway, I don't really know why I made this. I just kind of was thinking about that documentary I watched and was really thrown off by finding this clip of Kenneth Cook, and it just kind of all came together for me. Like, it's the boringness. It really is the boringness. That's such an important reason why they don't get coverage.
So we went full circle. We came back to where we started.
I personally feel a lot like Gideon felt when he received his assignment. He came